Hey everybody, today we're doing another topic video. I saw Doctor Strange not long ago and I don't see that many Marvel movies, so, I started thinking about all the different Marvel movies I've seen. And not necessarily just the MCU, but the all-encompassing, all Marvel movies. And I realized, holy crap, there are a lot of them. But I thought I would ask what some of your favorites were, just because I'm curious. But before we get into that, I will, as always, plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I am an artist. I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Okay, let's start with the first one. None. Like the great Martin Scorsese says, it's a theme park experience. Okay, so I'm not meaning to shit all over you, because you're not the only person to say something like that, but I strongly disagree. Strongly. I mean, I do agree with Martin Scorsese in the sense that, yes, I do think that movies are becoming more like theme park rides, just in terms of the execution. But to knock all of them and just say they're all theme park rides, I think that's really, really dismissive. And I don't care what kind of movie it is, if it's a superhero movie, if it's an art house movie, whatever. I mean, if it's made with passion and I can feel that, I'm probably gonna like it to some extent. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that there's just a ton of Marvel movies coming out right now that I like, because I don't. I've pretty much disliked a lot of them, but that's not to say that there aren't good ones out there and that there won't be good ones in the future. And it's very strange because I can tell some people think, just because maybe the way I talk or the types of movies that I like or the movies I tend to review, that I must feel like I'm above like comic book movies or whatever, and that's absolutely not the case at all. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse is not just my favorite Spider-Man film, it's one of my favorite animated films of all time. It's packed with humor, dazzling visuals, heartfelt writing, epic action sequences, full soundscapes, lovable characters, and killer editing. And on top of that, it absolutely nails what makes Spider-Man such an important cultural, literary symbol for so many people. I've seen it 7 times, and every viewing made me cry tears of joy. Yeah, okay, so interesting. I have seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse myself, and I was very surprised at how much I liked it. I do agree with you in terms of just like, as you mentioned, it's packed with humor. Packed is a great word for it. Of all of the mainstream, kind of the grand MCU types of movies, Marvel movies, whatever, this is the closest one that resembles a comic book. This is it. And I always feel like with live action comic book movies, there is something that is always kind of lost. And, animation, it lends itself to animation, these kinds of stories, so well, because you can stretch them in so many different ways. And I feel like, yes, they're doing it here. They're sticking to animation, but it is gorgeous animation. The visuals are astounding in this film. And yeah, it's just real snappy. It's zippy. The humor is fantastic. Every single moment, every inch of the frame is interesting. The rhythm is just really exciting. It's just a ride you want to go on and you want to stay on it. And I think it does really kind of capture what all of Spider-Man is about. And I do think this is one of the better Spider-Mans here that we have. But I think it also just says a lot about, like the direction of cinema and where we're going in terms of the digital world. All of that I find in a meta sense very interesting when I was initially watching the movie. I will say, though, as a movie experience, I do struggle with it at times. It is absolutely not perfect for me. I struggle a lot with the antagonist, as an example, and I tend to do that a lot in these movies. And I struggle a lot with the midsection. And I know, like, when it comes to like the MCU sort of thing, it's really hard to kind of fit all of that into a compact narrative where it feels cohesive. And I think that they just struggle a little bit here. The test allies and enemies period, it's just, there's a lot going on. And I wanted to see more of those characters and that team and the chemistry just a little bit more. So it does get a little bit convoluted, but yeah, I have to agree with you. Just in terms of aesthetic and feel, it is one of the better ones. X-Men 2000. It's really created the template for how to make a serious ensemble superhero team film, and to do it well. All the characters make sense and work for the film. It nails the sense of mutants and as social outcasts, which pretty much continue through the whole X-Men franchise. Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart provide a level of acting gravitas that is mostly missing from the later MCU films. It actually had a message beneath the set-piece action scenes about how people fit into society and the nature of liberty and the dangers of excluding people for their differences. Whether one agrees with the message or not, at least it offers something more than a series of set-piece moments and fan service. Other than that, the rather ham-fisted comment on the surveillance society that appears in Winter Soldier, only WandaVision offers a deeper message that has meaning beyond the glossy exterior exterior of the paint by numbers playbook that most MCU productions easily slide into. Yeah, it's interesting because I look at X-Men, the original 2000 film, almost like Marvel coming full circle, I guess because so many of those films came out later when I was an adult as well. In the year 2000, I was really into like the original X-Men, the ba-na-na-na-na-na, like the original Fox series, and I was really into X-Men Evolution as well. So when this came out, I was so, so excited. And it is so interesting just to see how different movies have, how different movies are, because those films, especially that initial one, the original X-Men, it's rooted in reality. Like these are characters and there's like a sense of danger. There's a darkness to it, and it does feel way more mature than the stuff today, which feels, very cartoony, very pulpy. And as you say, it feels very much like everything is built more around the fan service and around the idea of the marketing and around the set pieces rather than anything else. So it's like you just have a bunch of loose ends in between it all. And as a kid, I remember finding it a little bit haunting at times. Like as an example, the opening of the film, when you get to see Magneto when he's a kid and there's that whole Holocaust sequence, it was hard for me to watch because it felt very real. Then they recreate that, for one of the later X-Men movies, I think it was the Michael Fassbender McAvoy one in 2011. And that whole sequence that they're trying to recreate, it just feels so cartoony and so like movies are today. There's just nothing that feels gritty. There's nothing that feels tangible. And there's very little that is rooted in the human experience. So yeah, the tangibility of that film, I feel way more, like the moment of seeing like Anna Paquin as Rogue, kissing her boyfriend, and we're just kind of in the mind of this teenager, and suddenly this horrible thing is happening. It's like, I wish more stuff like that existed now. We just don't really have it. Not to say it's a great movie. I actually think in ways it's a little bit of a slog. It's a little bit too dark. It's a little bit too long, and especially a character like Rogue. I think she's one of the best characters in X-Men and also one of the more powerful and interesting. And yet I don't think she was ever really given a chance to shine in the series, at least, as far as the Anna Paquin character in the first 3 films. Unfortunately, never given a real moment or real voice like I wish she could have. And I feel the same for several of the mutants that I was intrigued by. And I'm not sure if it's quite finding the right tone for X-Men, but it's still an interesting movie and one that I do like. Spider-Man 3 has the tonal switches I like, where something it is campy and then strangely dark. People used to complain that there were too many villains and goofy scenes, but compared to modern blockbusters, this seems restrained and somber in comparison. It is really funny, but also gives the character of Peter Parker a lot of interesting moral challenges most movies of its kind won't tackle. I love the whole Spider-Man trilogy, but this one I have a huge soft spot for. Okay. I chose this one because, when I think about the original Tobey Maguire, the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, for me, no question, I prefer the second one. I just think it's the most well-rounded. I think it's the most satisfying as a story. It has great humor. It's also emotional where it needs to be. I don't know. I just think it really, really works. I think it's one of the better superhero films, especially of its time. And then I saw Spider-Man 3, and God, it was a letdown. And I remember at the time, it was really a letdown. I know you mentioned here that there are too many villains and goofy scenes and stuff like that. And you say that there are a lot more today. Absolutely. But I don't necessarily think that we need to lower the bar necessarily. Like I still struggle with that film. I still think it's really messy. That said, I would like to see it again. I was firmly on the side of never watch this movie again, it's crap. But I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people have noticed with all of the Tobey Maguire memes, especially since No Way Home, that film seems to have developed a bit of a cult status, which makes sense for Sam Raimi. I mean, he has a very cult-esque kind of quality as a filmmaker. It's like he is the kind of guy that like nerds are going to pass around his, his indie movies. And maybe Spider-Man has that cheesiness. And yes, I think at the time, I remember thinking it went too far. Maybe now there's something a little bit charming about it. Just rewatching some of the scenes, I find them amusing. I would say Iron Man 2008. Solid story, love the visuals, more gritty style compared to the Disney era, less CGI. RDJ is great as Tony Stark, strong cast. Yeah, I think actually Iron Man, I remember that was a big summer for comic book movies, especially Marvel and DC for sure, big time. And yeah, The Dark Knight was the shining star of the time for sure. But I actually think overall, for a movie, I actually prefer Iron Man. And I certainly prefer Tony Stark as a protagonist. He's so refreshing compared to somebody like Bruce Wayne, just because I've always seen Tony Stark as way more aware compared to Bruce Wayne. I think Bruce Wayne is very kind of like wrapped up in his own anxieties and his own guilt and his own privilege and all of these things. And it's like he can't really face himself. It's like he can't quite have the balls to kill, but yet he causes a lot of issues in other ways. And I don't know, I just find him very interesting. It's like he's a humanitarian, but yet that's not enough. And it's like, are you really doing the things that you could be doing? I don't know. He's got very unique motivations. But then I look at Iron Man, or I just look at Tony Stark, and he's just a playboy. He's a genius. He has fun with it. He doesn't lie about it. You know, it's like he has his fun with his ladies, and he doesn't have to hide behind some sort of alter ego. It's like he can present himself as he is. He very much reminds me certainly of like an Elon Musk type. It's like he's like a true innovator who takes the risks and has kind of fun with it and isn't afraid to ruffle some feathers. All of this is so perfect for Robert Downey Jr. Just the most perfect person to play this. I don't know whose idea it was, but kudos, really, really. I mean, just his delivery. He just has the greatest sense of humor, and he's also so charismatic in the right role. And this just capitalizes on all of that. And it's very smart writing. Yeah, I do struggle with aspects of the film. I do remember it, you know, kind of struggling with it in the third act. And certainly the filmmaking is nowhere near on the level of like Christopher Nolan will say. But just as an experience, as a story, I don't know, I find it more satisfying. I find Tony Stark more refreshing as a character. I find him more brave in certain ways. And I think they both have egos to a degree, but I just think that Tony Stark is a little bit more honest about his, and he's not so afraid to face the darkness and accept it. Logan is so damn good. The atmosphere, the score, and just the overall emotion of it puts it up above the rest. I would say Logan is one of my favorite Marvel films. And I remember when it came out at the time, I was thinking like, why hasn't this been done more often? Yes, I know that I tend to kind of struggle with a lot of the seriousness, the more like Shakespearean kind of quality that we're going for in these superhero movies. It's like we take them very seriously and they become very lofty in a way that I don't know if I'm necessarily a fan of. I miss the humor. I miss the cheekiness. I miss kind of the poetry of it all. That said, I do think it would be interesting, or I did at the time think it would be interesting to kind of take a dramatic turn. Let's go for something cinematic and really get psychological and see where you can go. And, you know, just try it as an experiment. And Logan, I think, was a really excellent way of doing it. And yes, it's brutal in the ways that really were refreshing. The idea of fitting this all into kind of a neo-Western, I think, is really brilliant, because it kind of reminds me of like John Wayne and the Searchers a little bit, just in the sense of it's like you have this icon, you have this amazing symbol that is Wolverine, and he's aging, he's worn, he's beaten down, and then you have all of this nostalgia, you know, like the world is kind of slipping away from him, and it's very melancholy, it's very devastating, and yeah, I like that they don't shy away from the brutality. I think there are some very interesting symbols, even actually religious symbols and things of that nature, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was perfect by any means, but it was a really interesting direction to go in that I thought, yes, I would like to see more of this. And I don't know, I think they really, really did a good job. They took some real risks, and they had a really great antagonist. And I think really a deserved and proper ending for that particular rendition of Wolverine, or that particular portrayal for Hugh Jackman, which I really love. He's fantastic. But yeah, so those are just a few, and there are so many. As I said, when I was going through, I realized, gosh, there are so many Marvel movies and a lot to talk about. Maybe I'll do a DC one at some point as well. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Over here, you will see my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.